This might be the most timely episode we've ever produced. Today, my guest is Anu Vora, and she is here to talk to me about what her company does, the influences in her life, people, technology, and at this point, current events. So Anu, welcome to the show.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Awesome. So you and I met, it has to have been like 2 months ago at this point.
Yeah, right. Like the week I moved.
Yeah. So so my wife is the community manager at the WeWork that you work out of. She introduced us, said, "Oh, you two will get along beautifully," and naturally we did. She's a good sort of things. And you told me about the work that you're doing, and I think it's just super fascinating. And lo and behold, we had no idea this was going to happen. We did not plan for this. We couldn't have planned for this, but we have been impacted serendipitously by current events, making our conversation all the more relevant. So. Yeah. Before I get into what those current events are, because I think that'll naturally come out of our conversation, let's start with, tell me a bit about, for the audience's benefit, what your company does. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Cool. So I'm Anu. I am the CEO of Admit Ally, which is a mentorship platform. We connect high school students to current undergrads that match them on interests academically and extracurricularly, and sort of say, I'm interested in going to NYU and studying math. So why don't I talk to somebody who lives that life and understand from their perspective, what's the day-to-day like? What was it like applying there? How did you differentiate yourself, and use personal, real stories to potentially uplift students that are hoping to be in their mentor's shoes someday?
So for our audience that's listening and follows any news that's happening, I'm sure they've heard that there's a lot of talk right now about college admissions and about, what it takes to get into the right college, choosing the right college, making your decisions, and in some cases, what are the winds that are at your back to help you get into those colleges. So I think it's amazing that fortune has shined on us to be able to have this conversation, not just about, what you're doing and why you're doing it, but at this current moment, why it's so important what you're doing. Just quick take on it. I'll just kind of drop the overall headline of it, but this scandal that has come out about this side door bribery to get into prestigious colleges story has just dropped. I actually just listened to the story about it on the New York Times Daily. Mm-hmm. It was really, really interesting. I'm curious, what's your kind of immediate take on it? What's your gut tell you about, what this story represents?
I think this story is unsurprising. You called it a side door. I would call it the back door. I think the side door is what happens in companies all across the country, all across the world, where it's like, hey, why don't we put this resume at the top of the pile, right? Why don't we consider this person on their merits, but maybe this person gets considered over somebody else because their parents know somebody. I think that will continue on for ages. And that's what we think of when we think of privilege. But this is illegal. This is actually bribing people when your kid cannot get in on their own. And it's appalling, and it's kind of the reason that Admit Ally exists, even though we really exist to combat sort of the legal privilege prevalent in the college counseling space. But it's upsetting, because I work with high school kids every single day that are doing everything that they possibly can to feel recognized by these colleges that hold all of the cards. And these colleges are saying, we're going to judge you, and we're going to tell you exactly if you're Harvard material or not. And that judgment is going to impact your life forever. Either it's psychologically, or you get certain opportunities. Not to say it's going to be worse because you don't go to Harvard, but that's how these kids genuinely feel. And then to tell them that there are other people that get to take those spots at those colleges that know that they don't deserve it, and maybe never even had to work because they always knew that this spot would be available to them at these colleges. I'm worried about what it's doing to the kids that I work with, because I feel like if they know that this is happening, then what's the impetus to even try? Like, let me just go to this state school and just, what's the point? I don't come from means. Why should I even put my all into this? Is it a just system?
Yeah, that's got to be, I can imagine the psychological impact that has for people trying to overcome what is already seen to be a daunting task of getting into
Mm-hmm.
top colleges, and then to find out that there is this kind of, to your point, unsurprising system in the background. There's the part that we knew about that. It's funny, the backdoor side door thing. A lot of the so in the story, the guy that was at kind of like the center of the FBI investigation referred to as a side door, and they often refer to the back door as like the endowment piece, like they donate a building or they give all this money, or they
Sure.
went there as their alma mater. So whatever the terminology is about it, though, I think we're all fairly not surprised that there's this level of there's this way of kind of sidestepping the system to get yourself in without going through the front door of your merits. So, but I want to kind of take a left turn on this and come back to it. I want to table it for a second because
Sure.
I think that's an important context for the discussion that we're going to have. And I want to come back to it and definitely not unpack a lot of the same, perspective on this whole corruption and bribery thing. But I think it's important to set that as a stage when we talk about what it is that you're working on. So can you walk me through a little bit of the kind of how the sausage is made in the work that you're doing about connecting prospective applicants to a college, to kids that are already at that school? Talk me through, I guess, as a starting point, where did the idea come from? And as part of that, kind of talk me through, I guess, what you saw the value in that being. And then from there, I'd like us to then go into a little bit of like how it's done and what the tangible stuff that comes from it. So, but start me from the idea. Where did it come from?
So the idea is actually not something that I even came up with. It's something I happened upon. My family in Cincinnati, we are, my parents are in technology and they're entrepreneurs, and they started running this program in Cincinnati called 0 to 60, where 10 high schoolers, 8 to 10 high schoolers would basically be invited to spend 10 weeks learning how to start a startup. And it's their own idea, and they have to build an MVP in those 10 weeks in the summer, and then pitch to investors. And so I oversaw the program. That was a summer after I graduated from college. I had just moved home, and I worked with these kids, and they finished the program, and investors were really interested in putting some money into it. But the kids were all going into either their senior year of high school or their freshman year of college. And they were like, we really need more help. Our high schools have one counselor for 480 kids. We have never gotten one-on-one time, and we're all at the top of our classes, and we have no idea what's going to come down next. And we need more attention, but we can't pay for it. And so they left that after the internship, and I was like, you guys should run with this. You can get money. You can build this thing, maybe take a gap year, go back to school afterward, of course. And they were just on to the next, and they really thought that the idea had potential and asked me, are you interested in potentially taking this forward? Because I was working on a different company at the time that did not work out. But basically, I started there. I started with this idea, these kids were like, I want to go to Harvard. How do I get into Harvard without spending a lot of money? Because they're all 4.0 kids, these founders, I should say. And they, that's where it started, where I wanted to go to this school. How do I get in? But it quickly turned into, I think it will be okay if I didn't get in to Harvard. I think it would be okay if I didn't go to this top tier school.